Hello and welcome to Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers podcast. I'm Matilda and I'm your host. I'm an inner transformation mentor supporting women in healing mother wounds through the one-on-one 10 weeks program and through Reclaim Your Fullness online community. To know more about these offerings, sign up to the newsletter or visit the website womenreclaimingtheirfullness.me. All the links are in the description of this episode. Now, today I want to talk about the biggest obstacle we face as daughters of narcissistic mothers, and I'm also going to share with you 3 steps to overcome it. So let's start by asking you, what does it mean to grow up as a daughter of a narcissistic mother? What is the impact of having a toxic mother on yourself, on your heart, on your emotions, on your life? What happens when we're raised by emotionally immature parents? What happens within ourselves, in our lives? The biggest obstacle we face as daughters of narcissistic mothers is the disconnection from ourselves. Growing up with unsafe and toxic parents, and in particular with a toxic mother, creates what is called developmental trauma. What is that? Developmental trauma encompasses the impact of the repeated and prolonged experience of abuse and or neglect during childhood. This has an impact on the child emotional health and development. So what happens when you carry such wounding from your early childhood? To keep it simple, although it's not, but to just make it really super clear, the main thing that happens is that you get disconnected from who you are and from what you call your gut feeling, your intuition, your inner wisdom. It's the same thing. As Dr. Gabor Maté says, trauma is disconnection from self. So growing up with a narcissistic mother creates such wounding. We can call it trauma, we can call it mother wound. It's the same thing, and it impacts everything in your life. From how you relate to yourself, to how you relate with others. From your capacity to succeed in life, in your work, all the way to take care of yourself. To your parenting and capacity to be in a healthy relationship. So growing with a narcissistic mother and the abuse that goes with it stifles the development of your identity. Meaning, as a child, in order to survive, you had to prioritize your attachment needs and let go of your authenticity. So these are 2 main needs of a child: the attachment and the authenticity. But attachment is more essential to survival. As a child, you can't risk being left behind or you'll die. So it made a lot of sense to let go of your authenticity, which is what's needed to develop your own identity, in favor of surviving. This means you grew up not knowing who you are, as you never had the chance to explore and experiment within a safe environment. And your mother, or maybe both parents, didn't offer a good example at all because of their emotional immaturity and unsafety. Most of my clients speak to not even knowing what their favorite color is, and I have been there too. I had no idea of who I was, what I wanted, although I thought I did. If you had questioned me in my early 20s, I was so opinionated and so convinced about a lot of things about myself. When I started understanding the mother wound I carried within myself and unpacking the layers of it, the trauma responses, the insecurity, the coping strategies, and all the things I had simply taken on from watching my mother, I realized there was little to none of my authentic self guiding my life. It was all the rest that was ruling every day of my life, every choice and decision, every interaction, every relationship, everything. And I was completely disconnected from myself. The result of this was a very unhappy life, feeling anxious all the time, guilty all the time, undeserving of love and happiness, inadequate as a mother, as a person in total, as a partner, unable to work in the things that I wanted, like so following my dreams and so on. So if this is you, I really so get it. I know we all have a different version of this with different details, but the core experience of being disconnected from yourself and not knowing who you are, it's very much the same. Have you gotten to that point where you realized how the relationship with your mother has impacted everything in your life? Have you woken up one day and went, shit, really everything is dictated by this messed up relationship I have with my mother? Because I remember that moment where it was like, wow, like literally everything, down to the foods I'm choosing, the clothes I'm wearing, my favorite color, as the example. So share your experience in the comments. When I had that moment a few years ago, it was not pretty. It was one thing to realize my mother is narcissistic and toxic, but to actually get to the point where I truly got the impact it had on my life, that was a whole new level of intense. And yet, extremely liberating too. I went through a phase of questioning everything. As I said, down to my favorite color, the foods I liked or not, how I carried my hair, the clothes I chose, how I organized my home, to the more important things, like what I needed in a relationship, how I parented my girls, what did I want to do as my job, what my passions were and are, and so on. So everything. Does that sound like a lot? I get it. It is a lot. And yet, it has changed my life for the better. This is the process of reclaiming your fullness, of reclaiming your life. Is this something that happens overnight? Definitely not. At least it didn't for me. I don't want to put a time frame because it doesn't have to be the same length of time for everyone. We all have our own personal experience of it. But I would lie to you if I could say that it happens overnight. What happens overnight, or like in a split second even, is the realization of it. I remember that moment was a very specific, precise and quick moment of going from maybe it's not that bad to whoa, she actually, everything has been impacted by this messed up relationship. Everything. Absolutely everything. I'm here in my room as I'm recording this episode and I'm looking around, and it's now my style to the awareness that I have to this point. But it was so different. Everywhere I looked, there was the influence of my mother in everything. And I didn't know where she ended and where I began. I had no idea. There was no separation. It was like we were weirdly the same person in two different bodies. And that was how much she had impacted my life. So this work of untangling yourself, of reclaiming your own fullness, your own identity, and getting to know what that identity even is. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes discipline, and it does take work. And maybe it does not sound like fun. And I get that because it can be intense, very, very intense. If some of you have started this process, or you're fully into this process already, or maybe you're the far side of it, you know what I'm talking about. You know that there are really intense moments. Moments where you feel like parts of yourself are actually crumbling down because they weren't actually you, but you thought they were, and you've hung to those things. You latched onto them for such a long time, thinking they were you. They made your personality, they made you who you are, and instead they're not. They're like pieces that were plastered there by your mother, and you didn't know that. So I get that it mightn't sound like fun, and yet it is the only way to get to live the life you so deserve, the life you want, the life of joy and fulfillment you were born to live. So personally, I would go through this process all over again to get to the place where now, age 40, I know a lot more about myself than I used to when I was 20, although back then I was way more opinionated than I am now. And yeah, this is how you get to live your life. This is how you actually get to understand the impact that it has. But then beyond that understanding, let go eventually of that story and actually start building your life, because that's what this is all about. It's not about keep on talking about our narcissistic mothers or our toxic mothers. It's not about keep on talking about all the crap that we've been through. That has a space. I mean, talking about it is important, but there's a point where we're actually wanting to finally live our lives, isn't there? Like a moment where you're like, you know what, from now on, enough of thinking about her, enough of sending my energy towards her all the time, or towards all the things that she's done to me, or maybe the things that she hasn't done for me, but actually getting to that place where you're like, from this point on, I'm gonna live my life. I'm actually gonna live my life. I'm gonna stop living in her shadow. I'm gonna stop living for her, because of her, somehow entangled with her, but I'm actually gonna live my life, your life, the life you deserve. So, as I said, I wanted to share with you 3 things or 3 steps that are very, very important. So, what do we need to be able to heal these mother wounds that we carry? Because that's where it all starts. The process of reclaiming your life is actually going inside your system, inside your body, inside your heart and soul and emotional system, and actually go to those places that hurt, or that have been hurt, or that are still carrying those wounds, and gently heal them with love, with a lot of love. So there are 3 fundamental things that we need in order to embark on this journey, on this new chapter of this journey. And one is safety, the second one is space, and the third one is support. Safety, space, and support. So let's have a look at these 3 fundamental things one at a time. The first one is safety. So healing requires safety. And this safety breaks in 2 aspects: external safety and internal safety. The external safety is a safe environment. Until you're unsafe in every moment of your life, your priority will be survival over healing. I get that all the time. Clients come to me at the beginning of the one-on-one program and they're like, I've been in survival mode. I'm constantly just surviving. Of course you are, because if the environment you're in never has a safety to it, you're always going to be in survival. If the toxicity is part of your everyday life still very, very strongly, like it was when I was still in contact with my mother, for example, that is going to keep you in survival mode. Now, does that mean that you have to sanitize your entire environment? Not necessarily. As in, to have a safe space where you can practice and heal, like within the mentoring program you have a safe space, with your therapist, within a community that's safe. So starting by having a space that's safe allows you to start getting in contact with what that safety, what that external safety means. And then this might actually also show you how unsafe a lot of other environments you're in are. And then from there, you can start building a safer and safer environment around you. Doesn't mean that you're going into avoiding every trigger and becoming like, I know this is one of the coping strategies that we can end up falling into, which is like needing everything to be like super safe so that we're never triggered. This is not what I'm talking about. And this is where the internal safety is also very important. That is the safety that you start building within your body. So within this safe external environment, that could be like a community, a mentorship, a group, whatever, you start building with practices internal safety. This is connected to the flexibility of your nervous system and its capacity to go through waves of emotions without getting caught in them. So, and the capacity to respond to triggers in a regulated way. So this is what then allows you to be in the world that is obviously not completely safe all the time. There's going to be things that can trigger in every situation, in your work environment, in your relationships, and in every space you're in. But when you're building this internal safety, you are going to be able to withstand these triggers and not actually get as triggered, and you're going to be able to feel the emotions that come up for you, but without getting caught in them. So that's why safety has these two aspects, external safety and internal. If we're only focusing on the external safety, well, I've done it for a while and I was barely getting out of the house. And there's phases where that can happen, and it's again to be kind on ourselves. There were times where that's what I needed. I needed a time where I wasn't even getting out of the house and I was just really working on that safety. But if we stay stuck in the external safety, then we remain that way. We're never actually going to be able to move through emotions and triggers with grace. So building the internal safety is also very important. So that's safety. The second element, the second thing that's fundamental is space. So space is given to you by the boundaries that you place around yourself. This gives you the space to explore yourself and to get to know yourself better without constantly having to deal with the toxicity which keeps you stuck. How much space you need is very personal to you and to your situation. So based on this, for example, you decide the level of contact you want to have with your narcissistic and toxic mother. You, like in my example, in my personal experience, I have been needing actually a lot of space from her, so I went no contact, but also more and more space from other family members, not all of them, but from some. And so a more tending towards a low contact with some of them was necessary for me. So it's very personal. That's not the formula for everyone. So how much space you need. And space can also be the time that you dedicate to yourself, to your own healing journey, to this playing and rediscovering what your authentic self is, what your identity is, reconnected with yourself. That's all part of space. And again, how much you're gonna need is personal to you. How long this is gonna take you, well, in my experience, it's a lifelong journey. I'm never gonna be done rediscovering myself because I'm always learning new aspects of myself. We're ever expanding beings. So when you start on this journey of reconnecting with yourself, rediscovering your real identity and all of that, that becomes like a journey that never ends, but not in an intense way, like in a beautiful, expansive way. So but that is space. That's the element of space. And then the third thing that we mentioned that it's very important is support. So this includes tools, practices, community, mentoring, all of that. That is support. You don't have to do this alone. I have done so much of this journey alone because of the wounding I carried, which had me believing that alone was better than opening up to be hurt by others. Being vulnerable in front of others simply was not an option for me for a very long time. And this made the whole process a lot harder to go through. So that's why I'm sharing this with you. Support is such a beautiful thing to receive and to open up to. Yes, it makes us vulnerable. Yes, we didn't learn that we could get support from our mothers. Actually, we learned that most of us anyways learned that we had to hold it all inside as much as possible because showing weakness was gonna make things a lot worse. And I get that. I could never do that in front of my mother. If I opened up and was vulnerable with her, which I actually did, because again, with the enmeshment and all of that, I ended up doing that a lot of the times. That always backfired and hurt so much more, and it was always a terrible experience. So of course it becomes intense to think, okay, I need to open up in front of someone else. But needing support is not a sign of weakness, but of strength and courage, which you have loads. You're here now, so I know you have tons of strength and tons of courage because you've been through so much. And I really know that even without ever talking to you, I know you have tons of strength and courage. And asking for support is a sign of strength and courage. And you so deserve to be supported as you go through all of these and reclaim your life. You do. You deserve it. So you don't need support because you're weak. You need support because you're a wonderful, courageous, amazing human being that deserves to be supported as you're walking through this path, on this path, and you're reclaiming your life, you're reclaiming your fullness, you're reclaiming your identity, you're learning to know about yourself, you're reconnecting deeply with yourself. Support is important. So safety, external and internal, both important. Space, so boundaries. Boundaries are what give you space. And support. Tools, practices, community, and mentoring that help you and support you through this time. So, yeah, that's it for today. If you are feeling into these things and you are looking at how do I get safety, space, and support, well, first of all, for the space, you can download the free roadmap to boundary setting. The link is in the description of this episode, and that is a great tool to start practicing setting your boundaries. It's like a step-by-step process that is going to help you in beginning to set your boundaries or strengthening the boundaries that you already have in place. And as for the safety and the support, you can check out the offerings on the platform. So the Reclaim Your Fullness community or the 10 weeks program, which both offer tools and practices and the support to go on this journey. So again, this is if you're called to work with me. And with that, I'm gonna send you so much love. Wish you a wonderful week. Bye for now.